The classroom was silent except for the soft hum of the display screens. Sat in the back row, watching the other students react to the images on the wall. A massive creature filled the screen, all teeth and claws and rippling muscle. Around him, students shifted nervously in their seats. Some looked away. Others stared with wide, frightened eyes. Professor stood at the front of the room, her long ears twitching. She was covered in soft gray fur that reminded of rabbits from Earth. Most of the students were two or similar species. Gentle creatures, prey animals that had somehow built starships and cities across the galaxy. "This is the professor said, her voice steady despite the slight tremor in her pause. "One of the apex predators from the system. Note the forward-facing eyes, the retractable claws, the muscle structure designed for explosive speed." The creature on the screen moved and half the class flinched. Didn't. He leaned forward slightly interested. The looked like a cross between a tiger and something reptilian, beautiful in its own way. Dangerous, certainly, but beautiful. "These specimens are kept in maximum security containment," continued. "We study them through observation only. Direct contact with predator species is strictly forbidden for safety reasons." The student sitting 2 seats away from, raised her hand. Her fur was a lighter shade of gray, almost white. "Professor, how many containment breaches have there been?" Ears flattened slightly. 17 in the last decade across all research facilities. All were resolved eventually, but there were casualties in each incident. The room became quieter, could feel the fear rolling off his classmates like a physical thing. To them, predators were monsters from nightmares. Things to be locked away and studied from a safe distance, through cameras and sensors and reinforced glass. The screen changed to show a different creature. This one was sleeker, with 6 legs and eyes that glowed in the dark. A hunter from a world with no daylight. "Fascinating," muttered to himself. Ha's head turned sharply toward him. She stared at him like he'd said something crazy. "Fascinating," she whispered. "That thing killed 42 researchers on Station Kel." "I know," said. "I read the report, but it's still fascinating the way it moves, the hunting patterns." Ha looked at him like he was speaking another language. Maybe he was. He'd only been at the Galactic Xenobiology Institute for 2 weeks, and he was still learning how different his perspective was from everyone else's. Professor cycled through more images, predators from a dozen worlds, each one more terrifying to the class than the last. She explained their habitats, their diets, their methods of killing, all from a clinical, distant perspective, like someone describing a disease they'd never want to catch. Raised his hand. The professor's ears perked up. "Yes." "Why don't we study their behavior patterns more?" he asked. "The social structures, the communication methods, the territory marking." The classroom went completely silent. Even the hum of the screen seemed to fade. Blinked at him, her nose twitching. I'm not sure what you mean," she said slowly. "Well," continued, "we're learning what they eat and how they kill, but not why they do what they do. Not how they think." "Think," a student in the front row spoke up. "They don't think, they hunt, they kill. That's what predators do." "But they must think," said. "They solve problems, they plan. That didn't just randomly attack. It waited, it chose its moment. That's intelligence." Professor's whiskers twitched nervously. We focus on containment and safety protocols. Understanding their thought processes isn't necessary for keeping them secured." "But wouldn't it help?" asked. "If you understood how they think, you could predict what they do, make better containment systems." The professor looked uncomfortable. So did most of the students. Ha was still staring at him with those wide, dark eyes. "That's an interesting suggestion," said carefully. "But it's not how we approach predator studies. We leave the psychological analysis to specialists with remote observation equipment." Nodded and sat back. He didn't want to push too hard. He was the new student here, the odd one out, the only human in a class full of prey species. The lecture continued for another hour. More predators, more statistics on attack patterns and casualties, more reinforced containment protocols. When it finally ended, the students filed out quickly, eager to leave the images of teeth and claws behind them. Ha approached as he gathered his materials. She kept a careful distance, he noticed, like she wasn't sure about getting too close. "Can I ask you something?" she said. "Sure." "Why aren't you afraid?" "Consider the question of the predators." "Yes, everyone else. We can barely look at them. But you watch them like you're watching a dance or a puzzle. You don't even flinch." He smiled slightly. "I guess I just see them differently. Where you see monsters, I see animals doing what animals do." "But they kill," Ha said. "They hunt, they destroy." "So do lots of things," replied. "Doesn't make them evil, just makes them predators. It's what they are." Ha's fur rippled, a sign of distress he was learning to recognize. "You're strange, no offense." "None taken," he said with a small laugh. As she walked away, looked back at the now dark screen where they had been displayed. He thought about the creature packing in its containment cell somewhere deep in the station, probably frustrated, probably bored, caged by people who feared it but didn't understand it. He wondered if he'd get a chance to see one up close. Probably not. The other prey species who ran this institute would never allow it. To them, getting close to a predator was suicide. But knew something they didn't. Something that came from millions of years of evolution on a world where his ancestors had been both hunted and hunters. You didn't have to fear predators if you understood them. You just had to think like them. The classroom lights dimmed automatically as the last students left. Stood alone in the empty room looking at the safety posters on the walls. Each one showed a different predator with the same message. Stay away, stay safe, stay alive. Good advice for prey, he thought, but he wasn't prey. He was something else entirely, something this peaceful, fearful galaxy wasn't quite ready to understand. Not yet, anyway. Picked up his bag and headed for the door. Tomorrow they'd learn about more predators, and tomorrow he'd keep asking questions that made his classmates uncomfortable. Because someone needed to. The cafeteria was crowded during lunch period. Sat at a table near the viewing window, eating his meal while watching the stars outside. The station orbited a beautiful green world below, peaceful and quiet. Mind if I sit here? Looked up, a student stood there holding a tray. His fur was a reddish-brown color, unusual among the mostly gray students. Go ahead, said. The student sat down, keeping the table between them. I'm Dong Min, I'm in your xenobiology class. I remember, you sit in the front row. Dong Min nodded, picking at his food. He seemed nervous. I wanted to ask about what you said today, about studying predator behavior patterns. What about it? Well, Dongmin's ears twitched. I've been thinking about it, you're right. We don't really understand them, we just fear them. Does that bother you? Asked. A little, Dongmin admitted. I became to understand alien life, but with predators we just lock them up and observe from far away. That's not really understanding, is it? Smiled, no, it's not. They ate in silence for a moment. Then Dongmin spoke again, quieter this time. Is it true that humans are predators? The question hung in the air, had been waiting for someone to ask. Yes, he said simply. Dongmin's nose twitched rapidly, fear response. But you're civilized, you have technology, you're in university. Predators can be civilized, said. Being a predator doesn't mean being mindless, it's just how we evolved, how we survived. Does it? Dongmin hesitated. Does it make you want to hunt, to kill? No more than being prey makes you want to run away all the time, replied. It's part of who I am, but it doesn't control me. I understand the instincts. I can work with them or against them depending on what's needed. Dongmin processed this information slowly. That's why you're not afraid of the predators we study. You understand them because you're like them. In some ways, yes. Before Dongmin could respond, Ha appeared at their table. She looked even more nervous than usual. Professor wants to see you after lunch, about the assignment. What assignment? Asked. She's giving us a project. Design a better containment system for a specimen. She said you should hear about it directly from her. After lunch, made his way to Professor's office. The professor sat behind her desk, surrounded by screens showing various predator specimens in their cells. She gestured for him to sit. Thank you for coming, she said. I've been thinking about your questions in class, about understanding predator behavior. Yes, Professor. I'm assigning a project to all students. You'll design an improved containment protocol for a specimen. I'm curious to see what approach you take. Nodded. When is it due? 1 week. Most students will focus on stronger barriers, better sedation systems, that sort of thing. She paused. I suspect you'll do something different. Probably, admitted. Whiskers twitched. I want you to know that your perspective makes some of the staff uncomfortable. Security Chief Wu asked me yesterday if you were dangerous. What did you tell him? That you've given me no reason to think so, but, she looked at him carefully. You do see things differently than we do. You look at predators and don't see monsters. That's unusual, unsettling to some. I'm sorry if I make people uncomfortable, said. Don't apologize. Different perspectives are valuable. That's why we have exchange students. But be patient with us. Most of us have never met a predator species that wasn't behind reinforced glass. Over the next few days, worked on his assignment. He watched the other students share their ideas. Ha designed a containment cell with triple-layered walls and automated defense systems. Another student proposed a sedation collar that would activate if the creature showed aggression. A third suggested keeping the in a smaller space to limit its movement. All prey species thinking realized, build bigger walls, add more barriers, control through force and restriction. He took a different approach. He studied this natural habitat. He read about their social structures, their territory needs, their daily activity patterns. He learned that in the wild they were actually quite solitary and only became aggressive when they felt threatened or confined. His design was unusual. Instead of a small, heavily reinforced cell, he proposed a larger, more natural environment. Not to be kind to the creature, but because a comfortable predator was a predictable predator. He included territory markers, elevated platforms for observation, and environmental enrichment. Most importantly, he included behavioral prediction protocols, ways to read this body language, warning signs before aggression, feeding schedules that matched its natural hunting patterns. When the assignment was due, Professor reviewed each design. She praised Haas defensive systems. She appreciated another student's innovative sedation technology. When she reached proposal, she fell silent for a long time. She started, then stopped. This is very different from the others. Yes, Professor. You're proposing we give the predator more space, not less. More freedom, not less. Controlled freedom, corrected. Enough to keep it calm and behaving naturally. A stressed predator is unpredictable. A comfortable one follows patterns. But the risk is actually lower, said. Look at the data. Most containment breaches happen when predators are agitated or desperate. They problem solve when they're stressed. Give them what they need and they settle into routines. Routines are predictable. Ears flattened against her head. You're asking us to think like predators, to anticipate their needs and desires. Yes. That's frightening. I know, said gently, but it's effective. That evening met with Bora, the human cultural liaison for the station. She was older than him, in her 40s, and had been working with alien species for years. They sat in the human quarters, drinking coffee that had cost a small fortune to ship from Earth. How are you adjusting? Bora asked. Fine, mostly. The other students are nice, but they're scared of me. Scared of what you represent, Bora corrected. They've built a civilization on being prey, on running, hiding, building walls. Then humans show up and we don't fit into their categories. We're predators, but we're also civilized. It breaks their understanding of how the universe works. Is it always like this? Asked. Pretty much. The galaxy is 89% prey species. They're brilliant, peaceful, creative, but they have a blind spot when it comes to predators. They can't understand them because they can't think like them. And humans can. We have to, Bora said. We evolved as both prey and predator. We got hunted, so we learned to hide and run. But we also hunted, so we learned to track and plan and predict. We're the bridge species. We understand both sides. Stared into his coffee. Professor gave us an assignment on containment protocols. The other students built stronger cages. I designed something that works with the predator's nature instead of against it. And that scares them. Yes. Bora smiled. Good. Fear keeps them cautious. But maybe eventually it'll turn into understanding. That's why you're here. Not just to learn from them, but to teach them too. Later that night, couldn't sleep. He kept thinking about the specimens locked in their cells somewhere in the station. Powerful creatures, intelligent in their own way, trapped by people who feared them too much to truly understand them. He wondered what would happen if one ever got loose, if a containment breach occurred here at the Institute. The prey species staff would panic. They'd seal doors and activate defenses and hope the creature could be stopped before it hurt anyone. All reactive measures, all based on fear. But knew there was another way. A way that required understanding instead of fear. A way that required thinking like the predator instead of running from it. He hoped he'd never have to prove it, but something told him that hope was about to be tested. The alarm started during morning lecture, a sharp, piercing sound that made every student in the classroom freeze. His head snapped up as red lights began flashing along the ceiling. Professor Spur stood on end. Her paws trembled as she reached for the communications panel. This is Professor, what's happening? The response came through crackling with static. Containment breach in Sector 7. Specimen has escaped during transfer. All personnel seal your locations immediately. Do not attempt to move. The classroom erupted in panic. Students jumped from their seats, their instincts screaming at them to run. Ha's eyes were wide with terror. Dongmin had gone completely still, frozen like prey hopping a predator won't notice. Everyone calmed down. His voice shook despite her words. We're safe here. The doors will seal automatically. We just need to wait. Was already moving to the wall display, pulling up the station map. We're exactly in Sector 7. Sit down, said, but her voice had no strength behind it. Professor, we're in Sector 7, he repeated, his fingers moving across the interface. The comms crackled again. The creature is near the observation deck. It's moving toward the central corridor. Station director has ordered all blast doors sealed. Blood ran cold. Is anyone trapped on the other side of those doors? Silence. Then quietly, one student. She was in the observation deck when the breach occurred. We can't reach her without opening the blast doors. The classroom went silent. Every student knew what that meant. I was trapped on the same side as the same side as a creature that could tear through metal and had killed dozens of researchers in past incidents. Can you sedate it remotely? Asked, her voice barely a whisper. We're trying. The sedative darts aren't penetrating its hide. It's agitated, moving too fast. Studied the map. The observation deck was 3 corridors away from the classroom. That was currently between their position and I. Standard protocol meant they'd wait, hope the creature moved away, try to sedate it from a distance. But that could take hours, and I was probably terrified, her fear sent drawing the predator closer. I can get her out, said. Every head in the room turned toward him. Professor stared like he'd suggested flying to the nearest star. What? I can get to and bring her back, if you unseal the classroom door. That's insane, Ha said. You'll be killed. No, said calmly, I won't. Ears were flat against her head. You can't possibly. Professor, I know what I'm doing. That is scared and confused. It's in a strange place with unfamiliar smells and sounds. It's dangerous, yes, but it's also predictable. I can work with that. Work with it? Dongmin's voice was high-pitched with stress. It's not a partner, it's a killing machine. It's an animal, corrected. A very dangerous animal, but still an animal. Animals follow patterns. If you understand the patterns, you can predict the behavior. The comms crackled, a new voice deep and steady. This is Sung-Ho, military observer. I'm watching the security feeds from the command center. Let the human go, Professor. His paws shook. Commander, he'll be killed. No, Sung-Ho's voice was certain. He won't. I know what he is. I know what he can do. Trust me on this. What he is, Ha looked at with new fear in her eyes. Took a deep breath. I'm a predator like that. I think like it thinks. I can predict what it'll do because I understand how it sees the world. You can't do that, Professor. None of you can, but I can. The classroom was absolutely silent. Students stared at him with the same expression they had when watching the predator footage. Fear, awe, confusion. Professor's voice was barely audible. You're really going to do this? Someone has to, said, and I'm the only one here who can. Looked at him for a long moment. Then shakily she pressed the door release. May the ancestors protect you. They will, said, though he knew his ancestors were predators too. Maybe that was the protection he needed. The door slid open, stepped into the corridor. Behind him he heard Ha gasp. The door sealed shut, leaving him alone in the hallway. The corridor was empty, lit by emergency lighting. The alarm continued its steady wail. Took a moment to center himself. He pushed down the civilized parts of his brain, the parts that had been taught to fear and avoid danger. He let the older parts surface, the parts that knew how to hunt, how to track, how to survive. He moved forward slowly, listening. His footsteps were deliberate, controlled, not running. Running triggered chase instincts in predators, not freezing either. Frozen prey looked like food. He walked like something that belonged there, something that had a right to be in this space. In the command center, Sung-Ho watched the security feeds. The other staff members stood in silent horror as they watched move through the corridors. Station director paced nervously, his long ears twitching with every movement. He's going to die, whispered. We just sent a student to his death. No, Sung-Ho said calmly. Watch. On the screen turned a corner. There was there, 50 meters away. A massive creature, easily 3 times size, covered in armored scales and muscle. Its head swung toward him, eyes focusing. In the classroom, students watched their own screen in horrified silence. Ha covered her mouth with her paws. Dongmin had gone completely still. It began to move toward, not running, stalking, its body low, muscles coiled. It's going to attack, whispered. On the screen, didn't run. He didn't freeze. He did something that made no sense to the prey species watching. He turned slightly to the side, made himself look bigger by raising his shoulders, and he stared directly at the creature, not with fear but with calm assessment. The stopped, its head tilted. What's happening? Asked in the command center. Sung-Ho smiled slightly. He's telling it he's not prey. Prey runs. Prey freezes. Prey averts its eyes. He's doing none of those things. Began to move again, slowly, deliberately, not toward not away from it, angling to the side. The creature's eyes tracked him. It's confused, Sung-Ho explained. It doesn't know what he is. He's too small to be a threat, but he's not acting like prey, so it's trying to figure him out. The circled, mirrored the movement, keeping the same distance, always watching. To the terrified observers, it looked like a dance. a deadly, precise dance between predators. His voice came through the comms, calm and steady. I'm moving toward the observation deck. It's following me, but it's not attacking. It's testing me, trying to decide if I'm worth the effort. Worth the effort, couldn't comprehend it. Predators are efficient, explained as he moved. They don't waste energy on difficult prey. I'm making myself look difficult. He reached the corridor junction. The observation deck was to his right. That was still watching him, still circling. Its tail lashed back and forth. Made a decision. He turned his back on the creature and walked toward the observation deck. Every instinct in the prey species observers screamed that this was suicide. Turning your back on a predator was death. But understood something they didn't. Running away triggered the chase. Standing still triggered the attack. But walking away with confidence, like you weren't afraid, like you weren't prey, that created doubt. Followed but slowly, curious now more than hunting. Reached the observation deck door. Inside he could see I, a young student, pressed against the far wall, trembling. He said softly through the door comm. I'm going to get you out. When I open this door, you're going to walk calmly to me. Don't run. Don't make sudden movements. Can you do that? The young student nodded, tears in her eyes. Opened the door. There was 10 meters away now, watching. He could hear it breathing, a deep rumble like distant thunder. Come on, he said to I. She stepped through the door, shaking so badly she could barely walk, put himself between her and the creature's eyes narrowed. Now there were two of them, two potential prey. But didn't let it process that. He made a sudden, sharp movement with his arms and let out a loud, harsh sound. Not a scream, a challenge. They actually stepped back, startled. In the wild, prey didn't challenge. This wasn't prey behavior. Used that moment of confusion to move. He guided I backward, always keeping his eyes on the creature. The followed again, but more cautiously now. They reached the junction. The classroom was just 30 meters away, so close, but there was still there, still following, and could see its patience starting to wear thin. Time for the final move, the risky one. Could feel this patience running out. The creature had been following them for too long, its hunting instincts warring with its confusion. Soon, instinct would win. Soon, it would decide that whatever these strange things were, they were worth attacking. I was pressed against his back, trembling so hard he could feel it. The classroom door was 30 meters away, might as well be 30 kilometers. I said quietly, when I tell you to move, walk straight to that door. Don't run, don't look back, just walk like you're going home after class. Can you do that? I can't, I'm too scared. You can, said firmly. Fear is okay. Fear keeps you alert, but you control it. It doesn't control you, understand? A tiny nod against his back. It took another step closer. Its muscles were tensing, getting ready to pounce. Had maybe 10 seconds before it made its decision. In the command center, Sung-Ho leaned closer to the screen. Come on, kid, show them what humans can do. Station director couldn't watch. His paws covered his eyes. This is madness, complete madness. It lowered its head. Its tail went still. Every predator species watcher knew what that meant. Attack position. Moved. He spun to face the creature fully, making himself as large as possible. He spread his arms wide, raised his shoulders, and did something that made every prey species observer's blood run cold. He roared. Not a scream of fear, a roar of challenge, deep, loud, primal, the sound of a predator declaring its territory, the sound that said, I belong here and you need to reconsider. It froze. In its entire existence, prey had never made that sound at it, never challenged, never stood ground. Go, shouted to I. She ran, not a walk. His command had broken through her fear, and she simply bolted for the classroom door, her prey instincts fully in control. His head snapped toward the movement. Fast prey, running prey, its hunting instinct fired. But was already moving. He jumped directly into the creature's line of sight, waving his arms, making noise, drawing attention back to himself. No, he shouted, I'm the interesting one, look at me. His head swung back to him, confused again. This small creature was acting like a rival predator, but it was so tiny. Was it a threat? Was it prey? What was it? In that moment of confusion, I reached the classroom door. It slid open and she tumbled through, safe. Now it was Justin alone in the corridor. The creature's eyes locked on him, decision made. It didn't matter what the strange thing was. It was alone now, isolated from the herd, easy pickings. It charged. In the classroom, Ha screamed. Students turned away, unable to watch. Professor's ears went flat against her skull. But was already moving. He didn't run away. He ran toward the creature, then at the last second, dodged to the side. His claws scraped the floor where he'd been standing. The creature skidded, turned, charged again. Again moved at the last moment, not running away, running across, making the creature work for every attack, tiring it out, frustrating it. "What is he doing?" Dongmin whispered. Sung-Ho's voice came through the comms, calm and educational. "He's making himself expensive. Predators calculate cost versus benefit. Every missed attack costs energy. If the prey is too hard to catch, most predators give up and find easier targets." They charged a third time, dodged again, but this time he grabbed a piece of loose equipment from the corridor wall as he moved. A metal rod, part of some maintenance system. When the creature turned for another charge, threw the rod. It bounced off this armored hide, doing no damage but making a loud clang. The creature stopped, backed up slightly. "He's establishing unpredictability," Sung-Ho explained. "Prey is predictable. Prey runs, hides, freezes. He's doing things prey doesn't do, that doesn't have a pattern to follow." Began backing toward the classroom door, slowly, never turning his back, always watching the creature, the followed but more cautiously now. "It's wondering if he's worth it," Sung-Ho continued. "It's been chasing him for minutes now, multiple failed attacks, energy wasted, and this strange creature keeps making noise and throwing things and acting wrong." Was 10 meters from the door. They matched his movements circling, but there was something different in its eyes now, not hunger, uncertainty. "Almost there," muttered to himself. 5 meters. It made a sound, a low rumble, not aggressive, almost frustrated. 3 meters. His hand found the door panel behind him. 1 meter. He tensed one more time, preparing for a final charge, but made a sudden movement, stomping his foot and shouting. The creature flinched back and slipped through the door. It sealed behind him with a solid thunk. The classroom erupted. Students were crying, shaking, staring at like he'd just returned from the dead. I was sobbing in the corner, safe but traumatized. Professor's paws were trembling so badly she could barely stand. Leaned against the wall, breathing hard. His heart was pounding. His hands shook with adrenaline, but he was alive. They were all alive. "How?" Ha's voice was barely a whisper. "How did you do that?" Looked at her, at all of them, at their wide, frightened eyes and trembling forms. "I told you, I understand them because I'm like them." "But you're not," Dongmin started. "I am," said quietly. "Humans are predators. We evolved hunting. Our eyes face forward to judge distance to prey. Our teeth can tear meat. Our brains are wired to track movement, predict behavior, understand the hunt. That and me, we speak the same language, the language of predators." The room was silent. Students looked at each other, at the sealed door where the still prowled outside. Professor finally spoke, her voice shaking. "All this time, we've been teaching predator studies to prey species. We've been teaching fear and containment and barriers, but we never truly understood them." "No," agreed gently. "You studied them the way you'd study a disease or a natural disaster, something to avoid, something to survive, but not something to understand." Ha stepped closer, though she still kept distance. "Your species, you hunted for survival." "For millions of years," said. "We were prey too sometimes, but mostly we were hunters. We learned to think like predators because we were predators. We learned to predict animal behavior because we needed to track them, understand them, outsmart them." "And now," asked, "what are you now?" Smiled tiredly. "Still predators, but civilized ones. We learned to use our hunting instincts for other things. Problem-solving, planning, strategy. We're still what we always were. We just chose to be more than our instincts." Through the comms, Sung-Ho's voice came through. "The security team has sedated it's back in containment. Nice work." "Thank you, sir." "One more thing," Sung-Ho added. "Station director wants to speak with you, and Professor, the board of directors is calling an emergency meeting." Ha looked worried. "Are you in trouble?" "I don't know," admitted. But he had a feeling everything was about to change. 3 hours later, stood in the station director's office, sat behind his desk, still looking shaken. Sung-Ho stood to one side, Professor to the other, and on the large screen, the faces of the Institute's board of directors appeared, all prey species, all looking at with a mixture of fear and fascination. "Mister," one of the directors began, "what you did today was either incredibly brave or incredibly foolish." "Probably both," admitted. "You risked your life for another student. You confronted her with nothing but your instincts and intelligence, and you survived." "Yes." Another director spoke up. "We've reviewed the security footage. We've analyzed your movements, your decisions, your interaction with the creature. Our conclusion is clear. You understand predators in a way we simply cannot." Stayed quiet, waiting. The first director continued. "This institute has studied predators for 70 years. We've had 17 containment breaches, 43 casualties. Today could have been 44 and 45, but you prevented that, not with stronger walls or better sedatives, with understanding." Professor stepped forward. I've spent my entire career studying predators from behind glass, teaching students to fear them, contain them, avoid them. Today, a student taught me that there's another way, a way I couldn't have conceived because of what I am. She turned to look at. You were right in class. We need to understand their behavior patterns, their psychology, their way of thinking. We can't do that, but humans can. The director nodded, which brings us to our proposal. How would you feel about staying at this institute, not as a student, as a teacher, a consultant, someone who can help us truly understand these creatures? Blinked in surprise. You want me to teach? We want you to bridge the gap, the director said, between prey species who fear predators and predator species who understand them. We want you to help us learn what you know instinctively. Looked at Professor. She nodded encouragingly. I'd be honored, he said finally. The director smiled, a prey species expression but genuine. Then welcome to the faculty, Professor. I think you're going to change everything we thought we knew about predators. As left the office, he found Han and Dongmin waiting in the corridor. They stood as he approached, though hostile kept her careful distance. We heard, Dongmin said, you're staying teaching. Apparently. Ha looked at him for a long moment. Then carefully she extended her paw, a gesture of trust, of friendship. Will you teach me about predators, about understanding instead of fearing? Took her paw gently. I'd be happy to. She smiled nervously. I'm still a little scared of you. That's okay, said. Fear is healthy. It keeps you cautious. But understanding is better. Understanding lets you work with fear instead of being controlled by it. Is that what you did today, worked with fear? I was terrified, admitted, but I understood what I was afraid of, and that made all the difference. 3 weeks had passed since the incident. The Galactic Xenobiology Institute looked the same on the outside, but inside, everything had changed. Stood at the front of the classroom, watching students file in. The room was more crowded than before. Word had spread about the human teacher who understood predators. Students from other programs had requested transfers. Some came from prey species who wanted to overcome their fears. Others came simply out of curiosity. Ha sat in the front row now, her notepad ready. Dongmin sat beside her. Even I had returned to class, though she still sat near the door, still working through her trauma from being trapped with the professor. Entered and took a seat in the back. She came to every class now, learning alongside her students, relearning everything she thought she knew about predators. Good morning, began. Today we're going to talk about predator psychology, not what predators do but why they do it, how they think, how they make decisions. He pulled up an image on the screen. That had escaped 3 weeks ago. Students tensed but not as much as before. They were learning. This is the same specimen that got loose during the containment breach. Let's watch the security footage from that day. The video played. Students watched silently as confronted the creature, moved with it, challenged it, and eventually escaped. They'd all seen it before, but now they watched with different eyes, trying to understand instead of just fearing. Can anyone tell me what I was doing here? Paused the video at a moment where he stood facing the, arms spread. Ha raised her paw. You were making yourself look bigger, more threatening. Good, why does that work? Because predators assess risk versus reward, Dongmin answered. If you look dangerous, you might not be worth attacking. Exactly, predators are efficient. They don't waste energy on risky prey. Every attack costs energy they need to survive. So they calculate, is this prey worth the effort? A student in the third row raised his hand. But you're so much smaller than the. How did making yourself bigger help? Because I wasn't just making myself bigger, explained. I was showing confidence. Prey doesn't have confidence. Prey runs or freezes. By acting confident, I created doubt in this mind. It wasn't sure what I was. He played the video forward to the moment where he roared at the creature. And here, the classroom was silent. Then Ha spoke quietly. You challenged it like another predator would. Yes, I spoke its language. The language of dominance and territory. It understands that language instinctively. It's wired into its brain the same way fear is wired into yours. Looked around the classroom. That's the key to understanding predators. They're not mindless killing machines. They're intelligent animals following ancient patterns. If you understand the patterns, you can predict the behavior. And if you can predict the behavior, you can work with it instead of just fearing it. After the morning lecture, Bora came to give a presentation. The human cultural liaison had become a regular guest speaker, helping bridge the gap between human and alien understanding. Let's talk about Earth, she began, pulling up images of his home world. Beautiful landscapes, cities, oceans. Humans evolved on a planet that was trying to kill us. We had predators that hunted us. We had diseases, natural disasters, a hostile environment. We were prey for millions of years. Students leaned forward, interested. This was a side of humanity they'd never considered. But we didn't just survive by hiding, Bora continued. We learned to fight back. We developed tools. We learned to hunt. We went from prey to predator over thousands of generations. She showed images of early humans, hunting parties, stone tools, primitive weapons. We became what we feared. We learned to think like predators because we needed to outsmart them. We studied their patterns, their territories, their behaviors, and eventually we became better predators than they were. A student raised his paw. Didn't that make you violent, dangerous? Yes, Bora admitted. Humans have a violent history. We fought each other. We hunted species to extinction. We made terrible mistakes, but we also learned from them. We learned to channel our predator instincts into other things. Competition became sports. Hunting became problem-solving. Aggression became ambition. She smiled. We're still predators, but we're civilized predators. We chose to be more than our instincts. That's what civilization is, choosing to be better than what nature made you. During lunch, sat with Han and Dongmin in the cafeteria. Other students had started joining their table now. The fear was slowly being replaced by curiosity. Can I ask you something personal? Ha said. Sure. Do you ever want to hunt, like actually hunt? Considered the question. Sometimes I feel the instinct. When something moves quickly in my peripheral vision, I track it automatically. When I'm solving a problem, I feel the same satisfaction my ancestors probably felt tracking prey. But I don't act on those instincts. I understand them, but I control them. That must be difficult, Dongmin said. Not really. You have instincts too. The urge to run when you're scared. The need to hide when you feel threatened. But you control those instincts, right? You don't run out of every classroom that makes you nervous. Ha nodded slowly. I never thought of it that way. We're all fighting our instincts, just different ones. Exactly. That afternoon, the advanced class met in the observation room, had set up a special demonstration with the Institute's permission. Through the reinforced glass, students could see the enclosure. But it looked different now. Based on its original assignment design, the enclosure had been completely rebuilt. Larger space, natural terrain, elevated platforms, territory markers. The itself looked different too, calmer. It paced its territory with purpose instead of frustration. It stopped to scent mark corners. It climbed to high points to survey its domain. This is the same creature that was so agitated it escaped 3 weeks ago, explained. What's different? The environment, a student answered. It's more natural. And because it's more natural, continued, that can follow its instincts. It has territory to patrol, places to rest, a routine. Comfortable predators are predictable predators. They follow patterns. He pulled up behavioral data on a screen. Since the enclosure was redesigned, the stress levels have dropped by 70%. It eats regularly, sleeps on schedule, shows no signs of the anxiety that led to the escape attempt. Professor spoke from the back of the room. We've been studying predators for 70 years. We always focused on stronger containment, better barriers, more sedation. We never thought to make them comfortable. Because you were thinking like prey, said gently. Prey wants walls between them and danger. More walls, stronger walls. But predators don't just want to be contained. They want territory, routine, purpose. Give them that and they settle. A student raised her paw. What about the dangerous ones, the ones that are too aggressive to settle? Those exist, admitted. Some predators are too traumatized or too territorial to ever be calm in captivity. For those, yes, we need stronger containment. But that's the minority. Most predators just want to follow their instincts in a safe way. We can work with that. Over the following weeks, the changes at the Institute became more pronounced. More human consultants arrived, not just from Earth, but humans who'd been living among alien species for years. Each brought their own perspective on predator behavior. The curriculum expanded. Predator studies became predator understanding. New courses appeared: predator psychology, cross-species communication, behavioral prediction. Containment breach casualties dropped dramatically, not because of stronger walls, but because staff were learning to read predator behavior, to predict problems before they became crises, to think like the creatures they studied instead of just fearing them. One evening found Professor in her office, reviewing data. Look at this, she said, showing him her screen. Containment breach incidents are down 90% across all Institute facilities. Staff injuries down 85%. We're learning. You are, agreed. I spent my whole career being afraid, said quietly, teaching others to be afraid, teaching them that predators were monsters to be locked away and avoided. I was wrong. You weren't wrong, said. You were teaching from your perspective, prey species perspective. That's valid. Fear keeps you safe, but it's not the complete picture. and humans provide the rest of the picture. We're trying to. Looked at him thoughtfully. Your species is unique in the galaxy, you know. Most species are either predator or prey. You're both. You evolved as prey and learned to be predators. You understand both sides. It's our blessing and our curse, said. We understand the fear of being hunted and the drive to hunt. We know what it's like to run and to chase. It makes us complicated. It makes you bridges, corrected, between two worlds that couldn't understand each other before. The final class of the semester arrived. Stood at the front of the room looking at students who had changed dramatically since that first day. They still felt fear when they looked at predators, but now they felt curiosity too, understanding, respect. We're going to do something different today, announced. We're going to review everything we've learned this semester, not just facts and figures but perspectives. He played the original footage from the first day of class, the images of predators that had made students look away in fear. Remember this, remember how you felt. Heads nodded, terrified. Ha said, I wanted to run. And now? Ha studied the screen showing a massive predator. I still feel fear, but I also see an animal, a creature following its instincts. I see behavior patterns I can understand. I see respect. Good, said. Fear is healthy, it keeps you cautious. But fear with understanding is different from fear without it. One paralyzes, the other informs. Dongmin raised his paw. You've taught us to think like predators, to predict their behavior, to understand their psychology, but we're still prey species. We'll never truly think like you do. You don't have to, said. You don't have to become predators to understand them. You just have to be willing to see the world from their perspective, to ask why instead of just what, to understand instead of just fear. A student in the back spoke up. What happens next, after we graduate? You go out into the galaxy, said. You work at research facilities, conservation programs, containment centers, and you bring this new understanding with you. You teach others that predators aren't just monsters to be locked away. They're part of the ecosystem, part of nature, something to understand and respect. He pulled up one final image. Himself and Ha standing in front of the enclosure, watching the creature rest peacefully on a high platform. 3 months ago, this seemed impossible. A prey species and a predator species, working together to understand creatures that scared us both. But here we are. Professor stood from her seat in the back. Has taught us something invaluable this semester. Not just about predators, but about ourselves. We prey species built a galaxy on running and hiding. We thought we'd evolved past the food chain, but we hadn't truly understood it. She walked to the front of the class. Humans volunteered to carry a burden we couldn't. They stood between us and the predators we feared, not to kill them or lock them away forever, but to understand them, to bridge the gap between two kinds of thinking. It's not a burden when it's your nature, said, echoing his words from weeks before. Humans are predators, that's what we are, but we chose to use that nature to help instead of harm, to understand instead of just hunt, to be bridges between worlds. Ha stood and approached the front. Slowly, she reached out and placed her paw on his shoulder, a gesture that would have been impossible on the first day of class. Thank you, she said, for teaching us, for being brave when we couldn't be, for fixing what we didn't know was broken. The classroom erupted in applause. Prey species students applauding a predator species teacher, something that had never happened before at the institute. As the students filed out after class, stood at the window looking out at the stars. Bora joined him, 2 humans far from Earth. Proud of yourself, she asked. Proud of them, corrected. They faced their deepest fears and learned to understand them. That takes courage. You know this is going to spread, right? Other institutes will want human consultants. Other facilities will redesign their containment. You've started something. Good, said. The galaxy's been run by prey species for thousands of years. They've built amazing things, but they had a blind spot. Predators weren't understood, just contained. Maybe now that can change. Think it'll work, prey and predators working together. Smiled, it already is. Look around. Ha studies predators without paralyzing fear now. Dongmin designs better enclosures, teaches with understanding instead of just caution. They're not becoming predators. They're just learning to see through predator eyes sometimes. And the predators are calmer, healthier, better understood. Everyone benefits. Boron nodded. You did good, kid. Earth would be proud. As they walked toward the exit, past the enclosure one more time, the creature was lying on its platform at peace. It raised its head as he passed, watching with those forward-facing eyes. For a moment, predator and predator regarded each other, understanding flowing between them in a language older than civilization, a language of respect, territory, and mutual recognition. They nodded slightly and walked on. Behind him, the settled back down to rest, comfortable in its territory. Contained, yes, but understood. respected, no longer just a monster in a cage, but a creature following ancient patterns that someone finally comprehended. The Institute's lights dimmed for evening cycle. In classrooms throughout the facility, prey species and predator species worked together, learning from each other, bridging gaps that had existed for millions of years. It taught the class about predators the only way they knew how, with fear and caution and distance. Then a human fixed them, not by making them unafraid, but by teaching them to understand. And in understanding, they found something better than fearlessness. They found respect, cooperation, hope. The galaxy was learning, slowly but surely. And at the center of that learning stood humans, the species that was both prey and predator, victim and hunter, afraid and brave. The bridge between two worlds, the teachers of a new way of thinking. And it was only the beginning.